Mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious, much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely
Right.
stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship,
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
and no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton Tonight. With the Treasury set to bank billions more than expected this year, could we be in for some pleasant surprises in the spring budget? Well, don't hold your breath while Chairman Hunt has his hands on our purse strings.
There is still a long way to go in the battle against inflation. Any country, anywhere in the world with inflation over 10% is seeing it at frankly dangerous levels.
I'll implore Hunt to ditch doomsdayism and revive low-tax Trussonomics to save the Tories from electoral oblivion in my digest next. Then my superstar panel weigh-in. Tonight, I'm joined by Dawn Neeson, Adam Brooks and Ashley James. Also coming up, will Harry and Meghan settle for nothing less than total capitulation from their enemies, including their own flesh and blood? Well, esteemed Meghan biographer Tom Bower thinks King Charles is treading a dangerous path by considering reconciliation with the Sussexes. He's live with me. You're not going to want to miss this one at 9:50. Then, in her first interview since the publication of Spare, Meghan's sister, Samantha Markle, reveals her terror at the power the Sussexes now have over the woke mob in Hollywood and beyond. That bombshell exclusive coming up at 10:40. Not content with viciously trashing their family, the Duke of Delusion and his vindictive wife are on a warpath to destroy their critics, including Jeremy Clarkson.
Did it surprise me? No. Is it shocking? Yes. I mean, thank you for proving our point.
But after dropping a hint, Clarkson, this is, that he caved to the woke by apologising to the Sussexes, should he fight back against his cancellation? Well, top Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine goes head-to-head with social commentator Joanna Jarjou in the clash. That's at 9:20. Westminster's toughest talking MP has made his feelings clear about scheming Sturgeon's dangerous gender reform bill.
Just a pathetic, snidey attempt to use young people, a cynical attempt on their pathetic pathway to independence.
So, do more MPs need to be brave enough to call out the SNP for using children as political pawns in their deranged bid for independence? Tune in for a dose of the real world with Lee Anderson just after 9:30. After his rousing Oxford Union speech went massively viral, clocking up a cool 20 million views and counting online, does author and podcaster Constantine Kissen think the tide is turning against wokeism? He's with me at 10:20. Plus, just 18 days after promising to stop terrorising hard-working Brits, look who's back from extinction. Oh, good God. More on the return of Extinction Rebellion's eco-terrorism and the media buzz at 10. We'll have tomorrow's newspapers first for you, and a new Greatest Britain Union Jackass 2. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. The brilliant Tom Bower coming up this hour. He has lots to say and knows a lot, actually, about what King Charles is currently thinking over how to deal with Prince Harry. So that later on this hour. My digest next. But first, the news headlines at 9 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you, and good evening to you. The Prime Minister says he wants to make sure all civil service police officers in the force are fully checked and fit to serve. All constabularies in Britain will now have to recheck their officers against the National Police Database to fully potentially identify anybody who shouldn't be serving in the police. Serving officer David Carrick was sacked from the Metropolitan Police yesterday after admitting to 49 criminal charges, including 24 counts of rape against 12 women over an 18-year period. Rishi Sunak labelled the Carrick episode despicable for the Met and said checking personnel needs to be addressed immediately.
I think the vetting processes have been significantly strengthened over the past couple of years, and this particular individual, I'm confident, would not have passed those vetting processes today. But what we want to do is make sure that there aren't serving police officers anywhere at any stage in their career, or indeed staff in police forces who shouldn't be there.
Health leaders have said ambulance workers and nurses striking on the same day is a huge concern as the NHS faces potentially the biggest day of strike action in its history. 10,000 paramedics, emergency care assistants and call handlers will all walk out in February and March following what the GMB union says is no action from the government. It's part of their ongoing dispute over pay and staffing levels. The Royal College of Nursing is currently staging a 2-day strike in its long-running dispute over pay and patient safety. Meanwhile, teachers are also planning to walk out for 7 days after no real progress, according to them, had been made on pay. The rate at which prices are rising has slowed for the second month in a row, but the cost of some food has hit a 45-year high. The Office for National Statistics says the rate of inflation fell to 10.5% in December. That's down from 10.7%. It says falling fuel prices were largely behind the slowdown, with the average petrol cost down by 8.3 pence a litre since last month. And police say a missing couple and their newborn baby have enough money to allow them to stay off-grid. Mark Gordon, Constance Martin and their baby have so far been missing for 11 days. They were last traced to a taxi in Essex, which was heading for London. Mr Gordon is a registered sex offender, while Miss Martin comes from a wealthy aristocratic family. The police worry that Miss Martin and the baby haven't had the right medical attention since birth. The Port of Dover is warning ferry services between Dover and Calais will be suspended tomorrow due to a national strike in France. P&O Ferries says it's produced an optimised sailing schedule in light of the 24-hour strike known as the National Day of Action in France. The port has said it is still open, with services to Dunkirk running as normal, but it advises travellers to allow extra time for journeys across the Channel. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Dan Wootton tonight.
The doom-monger-in-chief, Chairman Hunt, who seemingly gets high on a high-tax agenda, was back today, spreading gloom about our economy.
There is still a long way to go in the battle against inflation. Any country, anywhere in the world with inflation over 10% is seeing it at frankly dangerous levels for the stability of an economy.
But what high-tax Hunt isn't telling you is that there's increasingly good news coming about our finances, with the clamour for the Conservative Party to return to a tax-cutting agenda rightly growing. For example, the Bank of England has actually made £3.8 billion in profit from the £19.3 billion of gilts purchased last year to stabilise the UK debt market. That adds to the £11 billion the Treasury raked in thanks to an unexpected 0.1% growth rate in November. Meanwhile, the government's energy price guarantee is now estimated to be £10 billion cheaper in terms of cost. That's thanks to the fast-falling international prices. So in other words, there's no excuse for Hunt to keep the tax burden on Brits at the highest level since World War II, which I believe would effectively secure the election for the Labour Party. So, in that climate, cue a leak to The Guardian's Pippa Crerar, insisting that Hunt is planning a slimmed-down March budget with no immediate tax cuts. Well, that position simply cannot hold so close to a general election, with the Tories 20 points behind Labour. And the loyal Trussites, who, like me, believed Liz's low-tax, high-growth agenda was the right one, are organising and preparing to fight back. We've already seen some prominent Truss cabinet ministers emerge from hiding in the media, including on this show, to try and change the misconceptions around Trussonomics.
I think Liz's policies were right. Ultimately, the policy of cutting tax, letting people keep more of their own money, and making sure that we're going for growth in every corner of our United Kingdom.
I do not resile from the fundamental proposition that Liz set out, which is that this economy, our society as a whole, needs to become more economically dynamic, more successful.
Do I think that much of what Liz was trying to achieve is a good thing to achieve, that we need economic growth? Yes, absolutely.
Now, this group is formally organising, with Politico reporting today that dozens of Tory MPs, including Liz Truss herself, gathered in the office of Simon Clarke, who was one of the folk we saw there, to launch the Conservative Growth Group. Their goal is to bring back the mission behind Trussonomics, which was so brutally dismissed in the parliamentary party's anti-democratic coup to install Rishi Sunak and Hunt against the wishes of the party membership. And look, there's much to lobby for. Freezing fuel duty, cutting the base rate of income tax to 19p, bringing back the ditched IR35 reform legislation, abolishing the 45p top tax rate and returning it to the 40p rate of Tony Blair's government. All Trussonomic policies that would have been great for Britain, but were undermined by the political and media establishment. But to respond now, my superstar panel, former editor, current columnist at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and the broadcaster Ashley James. So, Dawn Neeson.
Oh, God.
What do you reckon? Trussonomics needs to come back for the Tories to win.
Stop. Hold on a minute. This is 1 month, right? The figures are not as bad as expected. 1 month, Jan. You know, one swallow does not a summer make. We have to play slowly here. You can't just suddenly do knee-jerk reaction. That's what got Liz Truss into this mess in the first place, and us along with it, by the way.
Because I think that if we stay as one of the highest taxed countries, we're not going to grow.
Well, we won't, no, but you can't just change it overnight, knee-jerk reaction again. As I said, that's what got us into the mess in the first place. I think we have to see what happens over the next month or so to see how it develops before anyone makes any decisions. Look, one of the reasons their situation is stabilised is because of what Rishi Sunak has done. I'm sorry, it is. I mean, Liz Truss, look, the policies might be right. We all want growth, OK? But the way it was gone about was completely wrong. She didn't cost it out. She didn't tell anybody. She just sprung it on anybody. The market's panicked. Yeah. We are in the situation
of course,
we're in now.
But the problem is, Adam, is what that means is that Hunt has gone so far the other direction. And I believe if the Tory party continues on the high-tax Hunt path, they are finished. What is the difference between the Tories and Labour when you've got a Conservative party not only giving us the biggest tax burden since World War II, but also not even promising to reduce that burden within the next few years?
I don't know any small business owners, and I know a lot, that would vote Conservative if there was a general election in the next 2 years. I don't know any. And
would they vote Labour?
A lot of them wouldn't vote Labour either.
So,
but what is happening is small business is being stifled and almost punished. And big business and corporations seem to be their flavour, you know. Sunak, they're globalists. They're not for small business. And if we carry on taxing hard-working people, why would they bother? Why would people come to this country, set up businesses? You know, we are one of the highest tax countries in the world. I feel strongly about this. They've got to turn. And I was one of the people on this show that I would back Truss, but the optics were wrong.
Yeah, but the fact is, yes, I think we can agree it was a little bit too fast, but they were never going to give her a chance. No, but they were out to destroy her from day one because she wasn't the MP's choice. They always wanted the globalist Sunak in that job.
There's many things, especially like hospitality. A VAT cut now would stimulate our industry. It will give people lower prices.
That's not even being talked about.
It's not being talked about. But I'm telling you, as someone that's on the ground and someone that's working it, it would make a big difference. We could lower prices. At the minute, I've got suppliers. I've had 10 emails this month, all putting up between 10 and 15%. I can't go on much longer without putting my prices up again. So prices in cafes, pubs, restaurants, they're going one way. Exactly. So it's going to get worse. Dave.
We saw that today when the inflation figures came out. Actually, we've got to cut taxes, don't we?
I would echo what Dawn's saying, that I don't think we need any more Tory U-turns and we need to stick with it. I also wouldn't get too optimistic about, the inflation being not as bad as we thought, because also apparently the World Cup had a lot to do with that, and also Christmas. We still have the third highest inflation in living memory. Obviously, we also know that public services are completely on their knees. So I don't like paying tax any more than the next person, but I think the issue at the moment is we have the highest tax since World War II, but that tax isn't going back into our system. And, whether that's healthcare, whether that's education, whether that's transport, for what we pay in tax, if we were to suddenly have to pay private healthcare, let's say have an American system, where you still, even if you have the best healthcare, you still have to pay a fortune in whatever treatment you might need, that would be way more than tax. So what I would like to see is where this tax is going, because it's not going to education, it's not going into roads,
do you know what? I'm actually
transport.
getting quite sick, Dawn, of the left-wing demonisation of foreign health systems, specifically America. But look, let me tell you, I was in Australia over Christmas. Now, Australia has the sort of system that Ashley would freak out about, she would say, this is a terrible system. I promise you, we got the best health treatment when we were in Australia. Yes, you have to go and pay to see your GP, but the service was superb. You could get in exactly when you wanted to, even, Dawn, if it was 10:30 at night. So I'm sick of this demonisation of foreign health systems, because we need to look to them.
I think you're conflating two things here. I think Ashley has a very valid point about the healthcare system in America, which doesn't work on the whole. However...
But private insurance does.
Australia and Germany, two examples of where a small private healthcare insurance, for those who can afford it, supports the national healthcare service. This is not how America operates. The national healthcare service for those that can't afford it. And you can, as you say, you can get a GP appointment on the day you actually book one rather than waiting. So those systems do work, and I think it's something that the government, whoever it is, needs to look at going forward.
And just increasing taxes and pumping more money into the NHS black hole is not the answer. So personally, I'm backing this growth group. I think it's going to be a really important thing. And remember, for all of the folk in the media who just love to slag off Liz Truss and turn her into a joke, remember, the vast majority of the Conservative Party members voted for her to be leader. So you dismiss her, and you dismiss her low tax ideas at your peril.
Well, ultimately, she crashed the economy, so that's what made her lose her job.
And she did a rubbish lectern as well.
She had a what? Rubbish lectern. Oh, I quite liked it. Dawn Neeson, Adam Brooks, Ashley James, my superstar panel are here all night. But still to come, as outrage grows at scheming Sturgeon using gender reform as a political pawn in her independence crusade, should more Westminster MPs stand up against her? One who already has, Lee Anderson, gives us a dose of things in the real world. He's live just after 9:30. But up next in The Clash, as it appears Jeremy Clarkson may be having second thoughts about apologising to the ungracious Sussexes. Should he now fight back against cancellation? Top Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine goes head-to-head with Apprentice star and social commentator Joanna Jarjou in The Clash after the break. I want to know what you think about this one. Dan at gbnews.uk. Tweet us using the handle at gbnews. Our poll running there. The Clash straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
It's time for The Clash. Now, despite receiving a full apology, Harry and Meghan are still hell-bent on destroying Jeremy Clarkson's career, and it appears the Sussexes' trademark lack of grace has caused the Grand Tour star to regret his apology. Eagle-eyed fans spotted that he'd subtly liked a tweet suggesting he had caved into the woke and should never have bowed to the Prince and his partner in the first place. And the nation's leading journalists seem to agree, with Star Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine arguing it's not about someone who has made a bad mistake apologising to those offended and everyone moving on in the hope of doing better. It's about cancel culture and a seemingly insatiable need for revenge. So, with his future at Amazon and ITV already in doubt despite his apology, should Jeremy Clarkson fight back against being cancelled at the behest of Meghan and the rabid Sussex squad? Let me know your thoughts by emailing me at dan@gbnews.uk or tweet me at GBNews. You can vote in our Twitter poll. But here now to debate this topic, I am joined by the aforementioned Sarah Vine and star of The Apprentice and political commentator Joanna Jaju. So, Sarah Vine, look, you were prepared to stick your head above the parapet and actually say, while you don't agree with what Clarkson said, and actually doesn't sound like you're a massive fan of Clarkson, this idea that he's been cancelled for what he said is actually quite chilling.
Yes, I think what Clarkson wrote about Meghan Markle was really horrible, actually, and completely out of order. And I don't think it should have ever got past the editors, and that was a big mistake. But he did apologise, and I genuinely think that if someone apologises, then it's worth accepting that apology on the basis that, you know, we all make mistakes. Everyone says things that are stupid or wrong occasionally, and it doesn't invalidate your entire existence. And my slight problem with the response of the Sussexes was quite sort of ungracious and mealy-mouthed. They basically said, thanks for apologising, but actually we hate you and everything you do, and you know it's not good enough, and we're never going to accept it. And that's just, well, you know, if that happens, then the world will just grind to a halt. I just think it's, you know, it feels to me like what they really want is to see him totally defenestrated and to lose his career and to be humiliated. And you know, whether or not you like Jeremy Clarkson, lots of people do. He's not really my cup of tea. I don't see why the man should be completely cancelled for doing something that he has admitted was a mistake, has apologised for twice. Let's just all move on.
And don't you think, Sarah, the way that the Sussexes have reacted to the Clarkson apology should actually be a real lesson to King Charles, who we're told is considering reconciliation after Prince Harry demanded an apology from him in another interview over the weekend with one of his best mates in the Daily Telegraph? Because to me, what it shows is that they're not going to stop at an apology. They're not going to end their campaign of trying to destroy the royal family if Charles apologises, because for them, this is actually about vengeance.
Yes, it's a mission. They're on a mission to rebuild the royal family in their image, what they consider to be acceptable. They want to. It's like the dissolution of the monasteries. They want to totally reform it. They want to burn it down and then build it back in their image. And again, you know, you may or may not agree with what they want, but the truth is that that can't happen. And the king. Harry and Meghan are pushing and pushing and pushing, and if he gives in, he's going to lose everything that he stands for, and that would be wrong. I mean, he could apologise to Harry in his capacity as a father, because I suppose that you could argue that as a father he wasn't perhaps the best father he could have been. But as king, I think he has to stand his ground, because there's nothing to be gained from it. I don't think there's anything that he could really do for Harry and Meghan that would satisfy their desire for revenge.
No, and look, very few parents are perfect. Well, apart from my own, I have to say that, but they really are perfect. But I have to be honest, having read Spare, I actually came away thinking, Charles was a pretty good dad. You know, there were lots of examples of times when I was like, what?
Spare is also full of some really unpleasant insults as well.
Yes.
Some of them aimed at women. I'm not going to go into it, but you know, he's quite unpleasant about some people in the media. And, you know, he doesn't hold back. And I don't think he's going to apologise for any of that. I mean, the thing is that basically, unless you conform to his worldview, then he won't accept you at all. And I just think that rigid mindset is very destructive and counterproductive, because it doesn't help anyone, doesn't help him, and it doesn't help anyone at all. It just makes it everyone just digging their heels in.
No, maybe he should apologise for calling me a sad little man and destroying my mental health. Joanna Jaju, you're here to respond. What Sarah got wrong?
Well, I think a couple of things, actually. I think that we should be clear about exactly what the Sussexes did say in their statement, and the things that they had a problem with Jeremy Clarkson. One of those was the fact that Jeremy didn't bother to actually write a letter of apology to Meghan. He wrote it to Harry, which kind of echoes some of the misogynistic kind of tone that he kind of began with when he was spoken about Meghan anyway. And then the second thing was the acknowledgement that the fact that Jeremy Clarkson, this isn't his first incident. It's also not kind of recognizing that he's had previous things that he said. And I quote, you know, from the One Show in November in 2011, speaking on the public sector workers taking a strike, he said, I'd have them all shot. I would have them taken outside and executed in front of their families. So I think that, you know, it's very clear that this is something that Jeremy Clarkson has a tendency of doing.
Joanna, have you heard of something, 3 words which maybe you don't have, very few people on the left have it. It's something called sense of humour.
Sense of humour, talking about having public sector workers.
Well, he didn't mean it. Joanna, he didn't mean it. You must understand, he didn't actually mean it. Just like he wasn't actually proposing for Meghan to be paraded through the streets of England naked and let members of the public throw excrement at her. He has an enhanced style of humour. Now, you might not like it, but just because you don't like it, does that mean he should be cancelled?
Listen. Words have consequences. Jeremy Clarkson is a public figure, and he's had a long enough career to know where the line is. Any decent human being knows where the line is.
Joanna, were you speaking out against Jo Brand when she suggested that my colleague Nigel Farage should have battery acid chucked all over him?
I wasn't invited to do an interview.
No, you weren't, were you? You weren't. And was her career impacted, Joanna? Just answer my question. Was her career impacted at the BBC or Channel 4?
Sorry, can I just make this point, Dan? If somebody had asked me...
Well, no, you can answer my question.
I didn't hear your question. I just want to make a point.
Was her career impacted at Channel 4 or the BBC?
And if it wasn't, then that's wrong. I'm not here to just... This isn't about just Jeremy Clarkson. I don't have a problem with just Jeremy Clarkson. I think that if you're in a public-facing role, you have a responsibility. And in this case, Jeremy Clarkson should be cancelled, Jo Brand should be cancelled. It's not about whether it's right or left.
But Sarah Vine, isn't this just awful? Sarah Vine, isn't this just awful because it is proof that actually the left do just want to cancel people? And Harry and Meghan talk all the time about compassion and forgiveness. Now, we've had to forgive Harry time and again. Nazi uniform scandal, calling one of his army colleagues the P word, posing naked in Vegas. He's been forgiven a million times, but yet he has no forgiveness in his heart.
No, this is true, but I do think there's, you know, you brought up the Jo Brand thing. I mean, she's a comedian. And, you know, comedy is all about pushing boundaries and saying things that are very close to the wind. And that's what makes people laugh. And that's how humans work. Yeah. And I think that Jeremy Clarkson is an entertainer. He's not really a public figure. He's got this persona of the sort of pub bore blokey, you know, a bit sort of, like I said in my column, a dinosaur, you know, rude and all of those. That's who he is. And, you know, it's not, you know, of course he's not suggesting that we do any of those things. That's how he entertains. I mean, there are other comedians. I mean, there was a comedian who said about me that having sex with me was worse than having sex with a dead pig. I mean, really, in The Guardian. So, you know, these things get said. You just have to, I mean, yes, it's not a very nice thing to say, and maybe that's true, but I just, I'm not going to ask.
I don't believe that's true, Sarah Vine. I don't believe that's true.
I suppose I come from, I'm quite tough in the sense that people say lots of things about me that are not true and not nice. Yeah. And, I sort of see it as the price of being who I am. I'm a journalist. And so, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You can't really get upset every time someone disagrees with you or says something horrible about you. And that's just the way the world is. But I do think, go back to the thing that Clarkson apologised. I think that what you said about him emailing, he said that he had emailed Meghan and Harry. So maybe he just had one email address and that was what he sent it to. I don't know the details of that. I'm sure that I don't think even Clarkson would apologise to a woman via her husband, but maybe he did. But, that I think is also not great. But what I'm saying is that people should be allowed to regret what they've done, to apologise and to move on. And it behoves, I think, the Sussexes to be gracious about this because they are in a position of power and they do hold huge power. Yeah. And
huge sway.
I just don't think, what do they want? For him to be living in a cardboard box on the street? I don't understand what their end game is here. How does it benefit them if he is cancelled? I don't understand. Why would you want that?
But they clearly do. They clearly do, and I think it says a lot about them. It was a brilliant column. Top Daily Mail columnist Sarah Vine, star of The Apprentice, and political commentator Joanna Jaju. Fascinating debate. So who do you agree with? Should Jeremy Clarkson fight back against his cancellation? Sean Harry on Twitter says, yes, he should, although I fear it would be a lost cause. Fighting against cancel culture is impossible when it's been embraced by media outlets and everyday companies worldwide. I couldn't agree more with you, Sean, actually. From Cam, if Joe Brand can still work after saying she wanted to throw acid at Nigel Farage, why can't Clarkson? Oh, yes, because he is a, quote, cis white male, and that's a no-no in today's world. And from Steve, there's no point. He admitted wrongdoing by apologising, never apologised to the perpetually offended. And I agree, actually. I think Jeremy Clarkson made a huge mistake by apologising. But look, the results are in. A whopping 92% of you agree that Jeremy Clarkson should fight back against his cancellation. Just 8% of you say he should accept his fate. Coming up, is King Charles treading a dangerous path by considering reconciliation with the Sussexes? Top Meghan biographer Tom Bauer joins me for an unmissable interview at 9:50. But first, Westminster's toughest talking MP has made it clear what he thinks of Sturgeon exploiting gender reform to foster independence. But should others in Westminster also be as brave? Lee Anderson takes us to the real world straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Time for The Real World with Lee Anderson. Now, Nicola Sturgeon's dangerous gender recognition bill has sparked fierce debate in the House of Commons this week, but it took Westminster's toughest talking MP to point out that this entire debacle is all a political ploy by the SNP. Watch.
This just proves to me, this latest debacle from the SNP proves that they are not fit to govern in Scotland. It's absolutely pathetic. But does the Secretary of State agree with me that this gender reform bill, so-called gender reform bill from the SNP, is just a pathetic, snidey attempt to use young people, a cynical attempt on their pathetic pathway to independence?
I couldn't agree more, actually. And Sturgeon keeps talking about how it's the Tories stoking the culture war. She's actually the person who is using trans people for political purposes, and I think it's sick.
It's despicable, Dan. I mean, this is part of a new war, I think, in Westminster. The SNPs are losing the debate in the real world on independence, and they will use any dirty trick possible to try and meet that goal. And this, actually, using young people as pawns in a political game, is worse than sick. They should hang their heads in shame. And if they had they keep banging on about another referendum on independence. If they had a referendum on this subject, they would get wiped out 90%.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. It sickens me. They are pathetic. They are a real sample of horrible people that they, like I say, Dan, using young people for this. It's sick. Absolutely sick.
And there they were yesterday in the House. I watched that entire debate. Booing and jeering the Labour MP Rosie Duffield because she was standing up for the rights of biological women.
You know what? Rosie's one of the bravest MPs in there.
Mm-hmm.
And when she stood up, because I was there, and they were jeering and booing, they are a rabble, absolute rabble. I sit there and watch them week in, week out. And I think if the Scottish people could see some of the behaviour that they come out with in that chamber, they probably wouldn't vote for them next time. It's disgusting. It's one of them things in Parliament, Dan, where when I get there, I think, I don't want to be part of this, but I'm not going to sit back and be quiet while these people are destroying young people's lives.
No, and I think you made a very important point. I couldn't believe this. The Food Standards Agency have worried Brits this week by warning that bringing cake into the office is as damaging to your co-workers as passive smoking. This was Professor Susan Jebb, and she compared snack culture to the old days of drinkers worsening their health by sitting in smoke-filled pubs. So, insane nannyism, I would say.
It's ridiculous. I mean, cake. What is going off with this world when they're complaining about cake? I mean, we've had racist cheese, we've had racist gardening programmes, we've got cake now affecting the workplace. I'll tell you what the problem is here. There's too many people in this country with too much time on their hands spouting this nonsense. It's about time they got a proper job. And we also seen today, I think in one of the police forces and some local councils, they was banging on about telling people to wear big, thick winter coats during the cold spell. I mean, do they think we're idiots in this country? I mean, if it's cold, you put your coat on. It's as simple as that. These people are earning six-figure salaries, and they're telling people to put a pair of gloves on and a coat. It's absolute nonsense. They need sacking.
And these folk in the Home Office are telling staff in the Homeland Security Department this week that they can't use the word mate anymore.
Well, listen, mate. I completely disagree. Isn't it nonsense? You know,
it is. It's madness.
I've had this conversation many times. You know, if you want to call somebody mate, you call them love, you call them darling. Well, what's going on in this world? These are terms of endearment. They're not meant to offend people. We need to call this out at every opportunity.
Nally, I've been following your Twitter feed, and you have started a major diet, right? A major diet. It's the keto diet, right? You're trying to lose you can't have carbs, you can't have any sugar.
Yep.
So would I be inflicting you to some form of workplace abuse if I said, Lee, I've bought you in a beautiful Victoria sponge?
Well, listen, Dan, I mean, I like the looks of it. Let me just taste it. Oh,
it's very un-keto, let me tell you.
I've got the cream. I'm not sure if that's a homophobic cake or a racist cake, but it's definitely a delicious cake.
Do you feel like I've just subjected you to a health crime as bad as passive
I think it's quite
smoking?
cruel. It's quite cruel what you've done to me. I didn't expect that, but a Victoria sponge, I do love that.
OK, look, one of the big stories of the week, Lee, is, of course, this ongoing strike situation. I've just got the front page of The Guardian now, which says nurses and ambulance staff to stage an unprecedented joint strike. What do you make of that story, Lee?
Well, let's have a look. I'll tell you what although I've got sympathy with public sector workers, I mean, in Ashfield, you'll probably get about 2 copies of The Guardian. There's a couple of weirdos by it. So what we normally do, if you see one of these floating around, is we just rip it up like that, rip The Guardian up, and just throw it on the floor, because that's where it belongs.
Lee, that's probably one of their 5 sales.
Well, I'll probably get done for littering for that.
Yes. All right, well, we know what you think of The Guardian's coverage of the strikes then. Well and truly, Lee Anderson. Thank you so much for taking us into the real world. That was Westminster's toughest talking MP. Don't think he'll be on the phone to Pippa Carrera later. Somehow. Now, coming up, Harry and Meghan, now a major threat to freedom of the press and freedom of speech. My panel debate that, and we'll take a look at the first of tomorrow's newspapers, other than The Guardian and the Media Buzz after 10. But first, will the runaway royals settle for anything other than complete capitulation from their royal targets? And would King Charles be a fool to try and reconcile with them? The couple's biographer, one of the country's top journalists, Tom Bauer, thinks so. He's going to join me live with his unmissable take. He's got lots of exclusive details on this straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back. And earlier today, it was business as usual for the Princess of Wales as she visited a nursery in Luton as part of her early years development work. The engagement was her first solo appearance since the release of Harry's spiteful Spare, which was jam-packed with personal attacks against her and Prince William. So while Kate admirably carries out her duties, the dim-witted Duke is in diplomatic hot water with the despotic regime of Iran using his Taliban kill count revelation to help justify the execution of a detained British Iranian, Alireza Akbari. But even though Harry continues to damage the reputation of Britain and the monarchy, King Charles is reportedly eyeing reconciliation talks even before his coronation in May. Well, my next guest, Meghan Markle's biographer and one of the country's top journalists, Tom Bower, received word that at a recent private dinner for friends hosted by the King and Queen Consort at Clarence House, guests were shocked by His Majesty's reluctance to confront his tearaway son. So, Tom, great to have you. You say the King could be treading a dangerous path because Harry and Meghan will settle for nothing less than total capitulation and victory. What have you learned?
Well, Dan, good evening. Well, I think the problem is that Charles hates confrontation throughout his whole life. He has made his best to avoid challenging people who might in some way harm him. And he's scared. He's scared of Harry, especially now when Harry claims that there's another 400 pages of his memoirs which have not been published. And Harry is able, in my view, to really damage Charles by releasing more information or inventions and lies about the problems with Diana, with Camilla, and his relationship with Kate and William. And I'm afraid that the King, instead of seeing that surrender is the worst policy to pursue, has made it clear to his close friends that he'd prefer to find some sort of reconciliation and settlement with Harry and Meghan. And that, of course, in my view, would spell doom and disaster for the monarchy.
I think it's absolute madness. I mean, surely, Tom, this is not something that Prince William is going to go along with.
Well, Dan, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, William and Kate have been utterly humiliated and insulted, first by Meghan herself in the Oprah Winfrey interview, and now again in Spare, the book. And the idea that William should in any way seek reconciliation, apologize to Harry and Meghan for anything, these inventions that the Montecito hucksters have delivered about the Prince and Princess of Wales is absurd. And I think here we see a definite division between Prince William and his father. Prince William will in no way want to apologize to Harry for his invented allegations about Kate and William not treating the couple properly, and will fear that if his father in any way seeks reconciliation, of course, the Montecito couple will certainly not accept just a simple apology. They'll want something that's actually grovelling, absolute capitulation, which will damage the monarchy even more than it has so far been.
Indeed, and shouldn't Tom Charles take a bit of a lesson from how Harry and Meghan responded to Jeremy Clarkson's apology this week? Because look, that was completely grovelling. It was bootlicking in its desperation to beg for forgiveness. And not only did they not accept the apology, Tom, they released a public statement trying to effectively end the career of Jeremy Clarkson forevermore. And they may well be successful on that front, and the woke media looking at where ITV and where Amazon is at. But I think they would do a very similar thing to Charles and to William. If they think that one apology is going to end this campaign of destruction from the Sussexes, I think they're very naive.
Well, I agree with you. Putting the Jeremy Clarkson issue to a side, of course, what the palace believes is that if they secretly negotiate a peace deal with the Sussexes, they can both make a statement and that'll be it. But of course, you can't trust Meghan and Harry. That's the point. Even if you think you've got a deal, and that I don't believe that is possible, but if you think you have, the palace will be shocked that they will renege immediately because they have no advantage of reconciliation. They've got no advantage of ending their vendetta against the Windsors and against Britain. Their whole financial future is tied up in publishing more revelations, accusations and all the rest. So I don't see that the palace should even begin to in any way seek a deal or apologize like Jeremy Clarkson did, at least, not that. But what they need to do is face up to the blackmail that's coming from California and in some way or other undermine Harry's and Meghan's credibility.
And this is blackmail, Tom. I think you're absolutely right to call it that. I did earlier in the week. The interview in the Daily Telegraph was nothing short of emotional blackmail on a global scale. Your solution to this is fascinating, though. You actually think that William really needs to be on the front foot and potentially even speak out publicly. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Dan. I think that once the publicity campaign of Harry's to promote his book dies out, which obviously will at some stage, only William can make a seasoned and reasonable statement to the world to assert the following fundamental facts: that Meghan was warmly welcomed in Britain, that everyone in the royal family tried their very, very hardest to make her feel at home and accommodate her, but that unfortunately Meghan only wanted to be the star and made it impossible for her and the royal family to collaborate and coexist. I think in the end they're going to have to somehow publish the report into the investigation of Meghan's alleged bullying of her staff in Kensington Palace. And I think that William has to say that the monarchy of Britain is not there to be a target for people who want to make money and gain publicity from attacking them. William is the right man to make it. It should not be an interview, but a statement in a regal manner and a normal and considered manner. But I think that is the way for them somehow and to draw a line under these attacks and humiliate the Sussexes to stop their campaign.
And I think William would do a very good job of that. You will remember his statement against the BBC after the findings of the Martin Bashir interview were released, and it was very regal. It was very sophisticated. I think William would do well doing that. Can we just talk a little bit about some of the fallout from the revelations in Spare? Of course, Harry wants to blame the British press when it comes to his kill count revelation having ramifications. But just this week, we've seen the despotic Iranian regime using it to try and justify a despicable execution.
Well, this is the sadness of the stupidity of Prince Harry. He doesn't understand the terrible consequences of many of his allegations and accusations and, unfortunately, misrepresentations and lies in his book. Now, in the case of the 25 Taliban he claims to have killed. It was a very, very foolish thing of him to have actually said that to his ghostwriter. The ghostwriter, of course, was looking for anything to sex up the book, and he didn't think about the consequences. I think Harry has put not only himself, but every Briton now in some sort of danger of retaliation. It's a very sensitive situation, and it's just one tiny example of the huge damage that Harry has caused by his book. He has undermined colossally the status of the royal family, but in this case, in the case of the Taliban, he has now increased the danger to himself. I don't think he realized, nor did, of course, Meghan, who is behind this whole thing, what the consequence would be of making this statement. I mean, it was a very, very dangerous thing to do, because we've seen what happened to Salman Rushdie. 10, 20 years after the fatwa was issued, he's still, in the end, there's always some lunatic who's willing to carry it out. It's hard to see how Harry is going to escape the dangers that he's created himself.
Huge ramifications and repercussions, and the best analysis in the business as ever from Tom Bauer, who is, of course, author of the brilliant Meghan biography, Revenge. Coming up, after his rousing Oxford Union speech went massively viral all across the globe, does author and podcaster Constantine Kissen think the tide is finally turning against wokeism? He's live in the studio. I'll play you some of that speech at 10:20. But first, as Harry and Meghan dismiss Clarkson's apology, and with Amazon and ITV considering cancelling the journalist and entertainer altogether, are the Montecito Moaners using their woke power to destroy freedom of speech and expression? My superstar panel dive into this one. We're back in just 2 minutes' time.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, it's the comeback that could save the Tories. So, of course, the left, with the help of the MSM, are determined to end Boris Johnson once and for all by airing every cough and spit of his Privileges Committee testimony, a move supporters fear will turn the probe into a live kangaroo court. So at 10:30, I'm asking, is Partygate hysteria being resurrected to sabotage the BBB movement, that's the Bring Back Boris movement, or could the media circus herald the return of Boris the Showman, as one of my superstar panellists suggests? Joining me tonight, Dawn Neeson, Adam Brooks and Ashley James. After Jeremy Clarkson is reportedly cancelled by Amazon and potentially ITV2, the latest target of Harry and Meghan's hate campaign has a powerful new ally, a strange sister of the Duchess, Samantha Markle. The free speech champion speaks out and gives her first review of Spare. She's live with me at 10:40. Plus, are the Sussexes and their woke army threats to freedom of speech? We'll debate that next. Also on the show tonight, after his rousing Oxford Union speech went viral all around the globe, clocking up a cool 20 million views online, does author and podcaster Constantine Kissen think the tide is turning against wokeism? He's live in the studio at 10:20. And after making a New Year's resolution to quit terrorising the public just 18 days ago, look who's back from extinction. I'll bring you more on the eco-terrorists of XR in the Media Buzz in just a few minutes. We'll have tomorrow's newspaper front pages and a new Greatest Britain Union Jackass too. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thanks very much indeed, and good evening to you. Our top story on GB News tonight. The Prime Minister says he wants to make sure all serving police officers in the force are fully checked and fit to serve. All constabularies in Britain will now have to recheck their officers against the National Police Database to potentially identify anybody who shouldn't be serving in the police. Serving officer David Carrick was sacked from the Metropolitan Police yesterday after admitting to 49 criminal charges, including 24 counts of rape against 12 women over an 18-year period. Rishi Sunak labelled the Carrick episode despicable for the Metropolitan Police and said checking personnel needs to be addressed immediately.
I think the vetting processes have been significantly strengthened over the past couple of years, and this particular individual, I'm confident, would not have passed those vetting processes today. But what we want to do is make sure that there aren't serving police officers anywhere at any stage in their career, or indeed staff in police forces who shouldn't be there.
Health leaders have said ambulance workers and nurses striking on the same day is a huge concern, as the NHS faces potentially the biggest day of strike action in its history. 10,000 paramedics, emergency care assistants and core handlers will walk out in February and March following what the GMB union says is no action from the government. It's part of their ongoing dispute over pay and staffing levels. And the Royal College of Nursing is currently staging a 2-day strike in its long-running dispute over pay and patient safety. And teachers are also planning to walk out for 7 days after no real progress on pay has been made, according to the union. The rate at which prices are rising has slowed for the second month in a row, but the cost of some food has hit a 45-year high. The Office for National Statistics says the rate of inflation fell to 10.5% in December. That's down from 10.7% from the month before. It says falling fuel prices were largely behind the slowdown, with the average petrol cost down by 8.3 pence a litre since last month. Now, police say a missing couple and their newborn baby have enough cash to allow them to stay off-grid. Mark Gordon, Constance Martin and their newborn baby have so far been missing for 11 days. They were last traced to a taxi in Essex, which was heading for London. Mr. Gordon is a registered sex offender, while Miss Martin comes from a wealthy aristocratic family. The police are worrying that Miss Martin and her baby haven't had the correct medical attention since the baby was born. And lastly, the Port of Dover is warning ferry services between Dover and Calais will be suspended tomorrow due to a national strike in France. P&O Ferries says it's produced an optimised sailing schedule in light of the 24-hour strike, known as the National Day of Action in France. The port has said it is still open, with services running to Dunkirk as normal, but it advises travellers to allow extra time for their journeys. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Dan Wootton.
Tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. First front pages are in. The Metro leads with the headline, Mr. Coffee Bean. That's funny, actually. They liken Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's condescending inflation explainer to Rowan Atkinson's cringy comedy character. I could see the similarities, I have to admit. The Eye leads with the growing scandal around prepay energy meters, revealing that 99.99% of court warrants allowing energy companies to forcibly enter private homes were waved through. Just 72 applications out of over 500,000 were refused by magistrates. The Daily Star says, let us eat cake. This is following Number 10 officially urging us to ignore Health Chief's advice on not eating cake at work. That's lucky because I bought lots in today. The Independent quotes ex-Brexit Secretary David Davis telling Boris to back off amid his claims a comeback will lead to a landslide defeat for the Tories. We'll have more on Bojo's rumoured return and the ongoing Partygate witch hunt in the media bars later. But first, let me bring in my superstar panel, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the businessman Adam Brooks and the broadcaster Ashley James. Now, the mounting threat of cancellation of Jeremy Clarkson has taken on a greater significance than the MSM, corporate lefties and the woke Hollywood mob are ever going to admit. In a letter sent in December and published by industry Bible Variety today, ITV CEO Carolyn McCall commented that there was, quote, no place on ITV for the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire host comments about Meghan. And with both ITV and Amazon reportedly weighing up Clarkson's future, this is proving to be yet another nail in the coffin for freedom of expression in this country. From the moment Clarkson's controversial words were printed, my position has been very clear. I was no fan of the column and his Game of Thrones-inspired attempt at humour was ill-judged in my opinion. But it's humour, and attempts to destroy his livelihood at the behest of the Duke of Delusion Prince Harry and his vengeful wife Meghan sends chills down my spine. And as I wrote in a new column for the Mail Online tonight, Harry and Meghan like to pretend their media campaign is concerned about reforming the press, but what they really want to do is cancel their critics, as if they're Russian or North Korean dictators. And Adam Brooks, I think it's really concerning, this, because Jeremy Clarkson is not just some journalist or some columnist. He is one of Britain's most popular TV personalities. He has literally hundreds of millions of fans across the globe. But because of the Hollywood orthodoxy, where they are drunk on this woke mumbo-jumbo spouted by Harry and Meghan, the fact that he has offended them means that he is literally looking down the barrel of losing his mainstream TV career. And that terrifies me, because what it means is that all of those smaller TV presenters and columnists and journalists all around the world are going to start thinking, oh, you know what? I think that about Harry and Meghan. I might text my friends about it in the WhatsApp group, but I'd never express it publicly because I might be cancelled.
They're hypocrites, a lot of them, as well. But look, I disagree with what Jeremy Clarkson said. I can't defend that.
But he wasn't saying it seriously.
No,
I mean, I'm not defending it either, but it was a joke.
It was in bad
He didn't actually mean, though, that he wanted Meghan paraded around the country naked.
It was in bad taste. But do I want him cancelled? No, I don't. I don't know who they think they are. I think they're getting a little bit above themselves here. How about we talk about Harry's long-standing record of racist comments or his offensive behaviour?
Yeah, he's been forgiven time and time again.
And even Meghan's proven lies over and over again. People make mistakes. He's apologised. Let's move on. You know, we can all call it out as being distasteful, or you agree with it or you don't. But does he deserve to lose future work? No, I don't think he does.
Dawn Neeson, where do you stand on this? I mean, you were the longest-serving female newspaper editor, I believe.
I'm stunned that the column got published in the first place. Did nobody read it? I mean, in my world, Dan, as you know, you worked in newspapers, the buck stops with the editor. It doesn't actually stop with Clarkson, because, I mean, someone should have read that and seen that it was wrong. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, it's profoundly wrong what he wrote.
But The Sun has also apologised and taken the column down. And you know what? You also know that when you're editing a newspaper, and I know, mistakes happen. They're often just little mistakes. It's not actually some sort of campaign.
I find this very strange, the hysteria about this. If it had written it about... Because he was also not very kind about Nicola Sturgeon in the same column. Now, the fuss about that is non-existent. No one really seems to care. It is because it is this particular woman that there seems to be this knee-jerk reaction. And, you know, and for Meghan and Harry to say that, you know, Clarkson's words were dangerous. Well, I think if we're talking about dangerous words, there's a certain book out at the moment, you might have heard of it, called Spare, where it mentions killing 25 Taliban. Now, Iran...
That's genuine danger.
Genuine, that's proper dangerous. I mean, Iran have picked up on that one. And sort of like, you know, the mad mullahs in Iran make Clarkson look like a sort of like a suffragette with the misogyny. So it's like there's danger and there's danger. And has Jeremy Clarkson's supposed cancelisation, which it isn't, I don't think he will be, put me off writing about Harry and Meghan? No, it hasn't.
You're brave, Dawn, and you've had a lot of experience. You've got to admit, most young journalists now would be very terrified, and most presenters would be too. Actually, James, are you one of those people on the left that want Jeremy Clarkson to be cancelled?
No, I don't want him to be cancelled. I think...
Well, that's a good start.
I like Clarkson's Farm. I've met Jeremy several times. I'm friends with his daughter. I think what I have issue with, one thing that you said of it's humour and also you saying it's not dangerous, I actually disagree with that because actually... you know, this sort of sexist language, you know, whether
I
it's...
didn't say it wasn't dangerous, I said compared to what Harry wrote in his book,
so I think
it is not dangerous.
Whoever they said it about, I don't particularly care if it's Harry and Meghan or if it was somebody else that he said it about. But what it does is, like, so the media forms the attitudes of society. Okay. And when you look in the news today, like even just today, we are looking at the 22-year-old Jake Davidson, who was radicalised online, became an incel, and as a result, it was the worst mass shooting in the UK. Then you look at, you know, David Carrick, the police officer. That was...
Well, I think this is going to be really
Wayne
unfair
Couzens.
if you're about to link this back to Jeremy Clarkson.
It all begins with sexism.
Okay.
And the reason Wayne Couzens and David Carrick got away with doing what they did...
Let me come in here and I'll let you come back. So I just want to follow your argument here. So you're saying that misogynistic language, negative, rude language about women can be dangerous. Is that what you're saying? Yes or no? OK, so I just...
I
get
to
that.
violence against women and girls.
I just want to read you some extracts from Harry's book, OK? So he writes about his school matron, Pat, who he didn't fancy as a teenager. Pat wasn't hot, she was cold. He describes the country's most successful female newspaper editor as a loathsome toad and goes on to say everyone who knew her was in full agreement that she was an infected pustule on the arse of humanity plus a rude word excuse for a journalist. And he even described Queen Camilla, his own stepmother, as dangerous and the villain. So if you're so critical of Jeremy Clarkson's misogynistic language, do you also believe that Prince Harry's language about women in Spare is dangerous?
I'm critical of anyone who used gender
OK, so
violence.
is that language dangerous that I've just read you? Because I'm following your argument here.
Yeah, but what I don't
like is Prince Harry is dangerous too.
Because I'm not here to defend. As I said, I couldn't care less whether he said it about Meghan or if Meghan and Harry are involved in the story. If there is sexism, whether it comes from Harry, whether it comes
is
from
that
Jeremy
sexist? Because you're
Clarkson,
saying Clarkson is sexist, but is what Harry said sexist?
I'm saying that his words have consequences.
OK, what about Harry's words?
I haven't read the whole book.
OK, but I've literally just read you passages from it.
If you're telling me there is sexism, then yes, of course, but I'm not...
So Harry is, as following your logic, this is not my logic, by the way, this is your logic, so following your logic, Prince Harry is as bad and as dangerous as Jeremy Clarkson.
He didn't call for somebody to be stripped naked, so I'm not going to rank sexism.
Which is a cross-reference to Game of Thrones. It was in incredibly poor taste. He shouldn't have written it. It shouldn't have been published.
But I'm bored of sexism being dismissed as this harmless banter because that is why things go
but I don't think that's harmless banter by Harry, describing a very successful, by the way, the country's, no offence, Dawn, but you would argue maybe the country's most successful female journalist, Rebecca Brooks, as a loathsome toad. I mean, that is utterly disgraceful.
The language in both cases is appalling, and I agree with Ashley, misogynistic language has no place.
Yeah, but no one's calling Harry out, Dawn.
But absolutely, but in both cases. But it's not as dangerous.
It's like the left with Priti Patel, the abuse that she got. You know,
well, we know that sexist abuse is a factor in lots of female politicians stepping down from politics.
Indeed.
So,
indeed, but again, no one speaks up when the sexist abuse is against Priti Patel or against Suella Braverman because they're on the right.
No, they do.
Now, I normally wouldn't judge the breaking of a New Year's resolution, but the Green zealots said Extinction Rebellion once again caused carnage despite swearing off disruptive protests in 2023, and it's got me all fired up. Their latest target, Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove, whose offices were splattered with black paint by a bunch of jaundiced ghosts in response to him green-lighting a Cumbrian coal mine in December. Look. Now, this attack on the Home Office, for which 2 men were arrested on suspicion of causing criminal damage, is not only misguided, given the mine will create 2,000 jobs in the midst of cost of living and energy crisis, it also proves you can't trust a thing these eco-loons say. After declaring we quit at the turn of the new year, XR lasted just 17 days before getting back to it. And if they dispute whether this was a disruptive protest, I'd say ask the poor folk, and we'll see them here. Look at them. Ordinary good people who were forced to spend the day scrubbing up after those revolting, middle-class, champagne socialist eco-terrorists, and they make me ill. Actually, James, Adam Brooks, Dawn Neeson, do stand by, because coming up, as fears grow that Boris Johnson faces a live kangaroo court in front of the Privileges Committee, is Partygate hysteria being resurrected to sink him for good? Or could this be his opportunity to charm the public once again? We're going to tackle this in the Media Buzz at 10:30. But first, after his rousing Oxford Union speech attacking woke culture went global virally, does author and podcaster Constantine Kissen think wokeism is on the downswing? He joins me live in the studio straight after the break.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Now, this channel has never shied away from standing up to the PC mob and their tokenistic displays of so-called activism, which has seen numerous important figures cancelled. But is sanity finally prevailing? Well, friend of the show, the author and podcaster of Trigonometry, Constantine Kissen's attack on woke at the Oxford Union has gone viral this week, with over 50 million views and growing. Watch.
Only thing that wokeness has to offer in exchange is to brainwash bright young minds like you to believe that you are victims, to believe that you have no agency, to believe that what you must do to improve the world is to complain, is to protest, is to throw soup on paintings. We sit on this side of the house because we know that the way to improve the world is to work, is to create, it is to build. And the problem with woke culture is that it's trained too many young minds like yours to forget about that.
Oh, Constantine, bravo. I can see why 50 million people plus are watching that, because I think it gives some of us hope that maybe the tide is starting to turn on this madness. What's your take?
Yeah, and I think also the reason people enjoyed it as well is I'm actually challenging these young people to be better. I think you know and I that we've all spoken about the problems with woke culture, and there are many problems. But I think what we have to start to think about is how do we get beyond that? And we're going to need these kids. They're going to be paying our pensions 40 years from now or whenever it is, and we need them to step up. If you know, the entire speech I talk about climate change, which is an issue they really care about. If you care about it, that means you have to work, you have to find technical solutions, and that's what I think we have to start getting to. Rather than just focusing on what's wrong with wokeness, I think we all know what's wrong with wokeness at this point. We have to start thinking about how do we encourage young people to be better, to be more resilient mentally and so on.
Well, yeah, and it's hard for them, though, isn't it, Constantine? Because as much as I criticise them, they are now growing up in a culture where they are told, right from a very young age, not only is it OK to be a victim, actually, it's sometimes a preferable thing to be a victim, to sort of wallow in victimhood.
Exactly, and I think that's where we as adults have to step in and go, actually, you know, if you want to make something of yourself, because look, the reality is young people do want to get on in life and make something of themselves. Victimhood is not going to be the way you achieve that. And quite a lot of them have never heard that message before. So one of the interesting things about it was talking to the students afterwards at the Oxford Union, and there were quite a lot of them who were...
How did it go down? Did they like what you had to say?
I think some of them liked what I had to say, but the interesting thing is there were quite a few people who came up to me and said, you know what, I was very skeptical, but actually it was an interesting speech and it made me think. And I think that's the sort of thing that we have to start thinking about, is what is our positive vision for these young people and for our own children? And you know, our generation, their generation, I think we've been badly let down by actually previous generations who haven't told us what is the way to actually think about things and what is the way to live life. I
agree, but I also think people have to make individual choices, don't they? And I think if you look at my history or your history, for example, neither of us were born with a silver spoon in our mouth. We also were not born in this country. The odds were against us, you could say. And there are lots of things that I could talk about where people might think I'm a victim, but I refuse to do so. It's not that I don't want to share myself, because I'm actually a very open person, but it's because I refuse to be one of those people who walks around being a victim. I think actually one of the worst things about woke culture is sometimes it's all about focusing on the past, and it's not about actually working out about how you can use the tough obstacles in life to actually make something of yourself.
I couldn't agree with you more, Dan, and that's why I think that is the message that we should be sharing with people is, look, 20 years ago I was sleeping in a park in Edinburgh because I couldn't afford rent, right? And here I am now, I've got a Sunday Times best-selling book, I've got a very successful YouTube show, and that is the beauty of the West. As you know, I talk about it in my book. You have the opportunity to make something of yourself. You've done it, I've done it, and there are plenty of people watching this who are maybe young and maybe haven't had the opportunity to do that. Well, guess what? You live in a country, one of very few countries in the world, where you can come from nothing and make something of yourself, and that is the beautiful thing about the West.
Look, I love your positive message, right? But what about those times when I get very angry, when I do see, like I just showed before the break, these absolute idiots, and by the way, they usually are young, middle-class, champagne socialists from universities like Oxford, throwing paint all over the front of Michael Gove's office today because they think they're making a point, but actually all they're doing is making poor working class people have a really miserable day because they have to clean up after them. You know, that actually makes me really angry because I think that level of privilege and stupidity is infuriating.
I agree with you. And by the way, you know, the more we've interviewed people on trigonometry about this issue, the more I've come to realise that wokeness is actually an anti-human ideology.
Yes.
And that is why I talk so much about climate change. And it's not about whether it's happening or not. It's about how are you going to fix that. And the problem we seem to have is because wokeness, you know, the story goes something like this: we are evil people and we must be punished. And that's why you get net zero and all this other stuff. And as I make the point in the speech, making poor pensioners die of cold in Britain isn't going to fix the climate, right? And so I agree with you that there's a lot of things to be annoyed about, but I think we have to start talking to young people. And remember, they're young people, they don't know anything. What did you know when you were 20? What did I? We have to start engaging with them and challenging them to be better.
The problem is, you think you know everything. And because of the Greta Thunbergs of this world, because of woke people like Nicola Sturgeon, who I think are actually taking advantage of 16 and 17-year-olds for her own political gain and to advance her own very woke political agenda, actually these young people are being empowered in a way that maybe previous generations weren't.
I agree with you. I think the incentive structures are there for them to be victims. I mean, you were talking about Harry and Meghan earlier. And we just had David Starkey on the show. We're going to release the interview on Sunday. And he made the point that Harry has actually done something very, very good in his life by starting the Invictus Games. Do you know what Invictus means in Latin?
Yes.
Not victim.
Yes.
Right? And this is the incredible thing. So we do, of course, you're right, we live in a world...
He talks about that in his book, actually, how they came up with the name, and it's so ironic, given that the rest of the book is all about how he's the biggest victim in the world.
Right. And so that is a very good example of how victimhood is incentivized in our society. But I think the truth is, as you know full well, Dan, that sort of approach to life is not going to make you happy. And I think Harry's a very good example of that. So the message, I think, to young people has got to be, if you want a fulfilled life, if you want to make something of yourself, you have the opportunity to do that, and crying about it isn't going to make things better.
No, it was a really brilliant message. I absolutely loved the speech. I watched the full thing, and I really recommend that everyone does. But I think you've really hit the nail on the head with Harry, right? Pre-woke, he did something brilliant for the world, the Invictus Games, something that could have been his legacy, and maybe one day it still will be. And he seemed really happy, right? He seemed like a really happy guy. Post-woke, he's done nothing for the world.
Post-woke or post-Meghan?
Because all he does, well, maybe one day post-Meghan.
A beautiful woman will do that.
But indeed, for now, you know, post his woke agenda, miserable.
Yeah.
And all he does is talk about being a victim rather than helping the real victims of the world. And I think actually if young people sort of look at those two Harrys, maybe they'll get an idea of why sometimes you want to reject the woke ideology. But I think you've done a very good job to start that.
Thanks for having me back, Dan.
Great to see you, Constantine. That's Constantine Kissen, who is, of course, host of the brilliant Trigonometry podcast. Got to get that plug in. But coming up, if Jeremy Clarkson is feeling on the outs, there's good news. He has a powerful new ally in the shape of Meghan's estranged sister, Samantha Markle. So she's going to speak out and give her first review of Prince Harry's spare. That's at 10:40, so stand by. But first, could the conspiring left and the MSM kill off Boris Johnson's comeback before it's even begun with their televised Partygate probe? Or will the former PM be able to win back the public's affection? My superstar panel debate that, and we'll have more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages straight after the break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236 and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. Straight to the front pages, and the Daily Telegraph leads with news that celebrated British businessman Sir James Dyson believes, quote, stupid and short-sighted economic policy is holding back the nation's recovery after years of COVID inertia, and I couldn't agree more. Likewise, the Daily Mail leading with Tory MPs pleading to Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to ease the tax burden on working people or pay the price at the ballot box. That was the subject of my digest at the top of the show. And the Daily Express splashes on the King gifting £250 million to the nation in a windfall from an offshore wind farm deal. Thanks, Charles. More in the Media Buzz now with tonight's superstar panel, Dawn Neeson, Adam Brooks and Ashley James. Now, Boris Johnson looks set to return credibility to the autobiography genre after it was announced this week he will write a memoir like no other with publishing house HarperCollins. But as the Westminster witch hunt against him continues, the former PM's story is far from finished. Next month, he faces a televised hearing to determine whether he was in contempt of Parliament during Partygate. And presiding over the sorry affair is Chair of the Privileges Committee and Labour Chief Boris hater, Harriet Harman. True to form, the MSM are salivating at the prospect of a lefty pile-on, with Sly News already committing to show the whole evidence session. Meanwhile, key allies of Boris have dismissed the probe, saying this is not just a kangaroo court, it's a live kangaroo court. But we know how great Bojo is in front of the camera, so could the whole affair be manoeuvred to work in his favour as we see return of Boris the showman? The greatest showman. Well, that's the view of Dawn Neeson. And Dawn, this really fascinated me, actually, because everyone has said this is going to be bad for Boris, right? This is going to be a terrible moment.
It's like forcing Dracula to work in a blood bank. I mean, it's insane. He's going to love it. This is what Boris does. He is a showman, whether you like him or not. He thrives in front of a live audience, doing that ruffled hair thing and waffling on. And he won't actually say anything important, but he will win people over again.
So weirdly, you think that this Privileges Committee, far from finishing him off, could actually start the political
It's a
comeback.
promotion. This is what he wants. This is exactly what Boris wants, exactly what he needs, exactly where he thrives. I mean, if politicians were like, the spitting image ones, Boris Johnson is full on Technicolor, right? Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer are more grey. I mean, he's going to thrive on it. They're mad.
Actually, James, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I would say that your side of politics have basically decided that this Privileges Committee is going to be the moment to finish the chances of Boris's comeback. And for people in the Labour Party, that's really important because they know that Boris could stop Starmer becoming PM.
I don't really care about it being a left or a right thing, but I think for our democracy it is very important to find out if he lied to Parliament, which is what this is about. And, you know, you can blame cancel culture or backstabbers in the party or whatever, but ultimately Boris was responsible for his own doom in the end, whether that was, you know, the Chris Pincher affair or whether that was Partygate. And you can make as many excuses as you want for Partygate, but if it transpires that he did lie, and we shall see, I'm sorry, that is in the public interest, especially because so many of us made sacrifices with him in charge telling us to make those sacrifices at that time. But I would also agree with Dawn that he is very charming, and I'm certain that he will win people over. But I think the only reason news channels are looking at covering it is because they know that there is a public interest and an appetite for him, whether that's because people love him or hate him.
Adam Brooks, I just don't buy that. I believe that Boris has enough enemies within both the Labour and the Conservative Party that they conspired with the mainstream media. You know how I feel about Partygate. This was a beat-up right from the start. It was a tiny story, It was certainly not a story that should bring down a Prime Minister.
Look, let's just hit the audience with some facts here. If the Conservative Party and the mainstream media hadn't deposed Boris, mortgage rates wouldn't have spiked, the markets wouldn't have been rattled, and we wouldn't be paying higher taxes. That's a fact. If he was still Prime Minister, things would have gone on.
Which I said time and again, by the way. I believe the reason there was such a push to get Boris out is because they knew it was going to bring chaos and carnage to the country, and it did.
It did bring chaos.
It wasn't chaos and carnage.
No. But let's also remember they're 20 points behind in the polls. There was 5% behind, or 6%.
They were neck and neck. They were neck and neck.
After 12 years of Tory rule, that's pretty good in polling. And if there was a general election called, the Conservatives probably would have won. Now, I think the only hope that Conservatives have got, and you don't need to be a Boris fan, is if he comes back.
I agree.
And you think, Dawn, you think Boris is coming back, right? You think he will?
I think he wants to. Boris being Boris, this is what Boris does. And I agree with Adam. I think the only chance the Tories have got, and I've got that pretty zero chance of winning the next election, is with Boris.
How do you feel about the BBB campaign? Ashley, bring back Boris.
I think it's awful, and I think, you know, he's a proven liar. And look, I would agree that he's charismatic and he's charming. Let him be on. Have I got news for you? But I don't want him in charge of the country, and he's chaotic, and our country
I always
needs calm.
Need to bring balance to the discussion. Keir Starmer is a proven liar. Time and again, he made pledges during the leadership election to become leader of the Labour Party, and he lied about them, and he's now admitted that. So,
I don't care what you say. They lied about Currygate. They lied about how many people were there, who was there, whatever happened, and the little conspiring mob that they had, and somehow got away with it.
Of course
they lied.
They lied about whether Angela Rayner was there. Exactly. They lied about, Beargate.
Politicians, it's what they do.
Totally.
But look.
Totally. If Starmer didn't go down for Beargate, there is no way.
The left do not want Boris to come back because they
Boris has a proven track record of being a liar. He's not someone I want in charge of the country.
Fear him.
Yeah. No, but I've also just made the point. Starmer has a massive track record of lying too, so we've got to bring balance to that discussion. Ashley James, Adam Brooks, Dawn Neeson, thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Ringing endorsement. Now, coming up, which politician is in the running for Union Jackass after mingling with the elite of the World Economic Forum? Find out as I crown tonight's GBUJ at 10:50. But up next, with Clarkson on the verge of cancellation, he's received the backing of one of the key figures, really, in the Sussex story, Meghan's estranged sister, Samantha Markle. The free speech champion speaks out and gives her first review of Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, just after the break. We're back in 2.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where the world's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. From the royal family to Jeremy Clarkson, one constant theme in the Harry and Meghan saga is their ability to demand and attract apologies from those who dare to get in their way. Despite two grovelling attempts of his own, Clarkson is in danger of being cancelled by Amazon and potentially ITV2 for his column gaffe. But after ungraciously refusing to accept Clarkson's mea culpa, what's also now clear is the Sussexes intend to not only shame opponents, but destroy and cancel them. One woman who's experienced the wrath of Meghan is her estranged half-sister Samantha Markle, an American free speech champion who has grave concerns over the Sussexes' growing power over woke Hollywood. And I'm delighted to say she joins me live now for her first interview since the publication of Prince Harry's book, Spare. So look, Sam, I know you're a free speech champion. How do you feel about your sister, who is seemingly in cahoots with these woke Hollywood corporations to get folk like Jeremy Clarkson, Piers Morgan, and Sharon Osbourne cancelled? And probably, Sam, they'll be coming for someone else next.
Yeah, all I can say is wokies step to the curb. It's so ridiculous. Granted, Jeremy Clarkson may have gone a little bit overboard, but to cancel everybody because you don't like what they say, and let's face facts, I think at this point, in my opinion, Harry and Meghan are notorious from their interviews and the Spare to being the ones who say the most egregious and offensive things. And let's face it, I think it's quite sadistic, like straight out of the Marquis de Sade playbook, to demand an apology, to humiliate someone into an apology, and then refuse to accept it once you got them on their knees apologizing. So we have to wonder, do they derive pleasure from that? Is it a conquest thing? It seems really sadistic. And this whole cancel thing, no, it's not going to fly. You can't silence everybody because they respond to something egregious that you do or that they think you do. People have to be allowed to their opinion. So that's all she wrote.
No, I think that's a really fascinating point, actually. And if I look at your family, Sam, both yourself and your father, Thomas, you have never apologised to Meghan. Now, she's wanted an apology time and again, hasn't she? She thinks the way that you acted was terrible. You've never apologised. I wonder if the reason you didn't apologise is because you deep down knew, you and Thomas deep down knew that she was never going to accept it, just like she's never accepted Clarkson's apology.
Well, no, more than that, we don't feel like we should be the ones to apologize. When we find out that behind closed doors, PR are being paid to disparage us, and we are out there responding to that and responding to her cold disregard of us, especially my dad, no, we are not clearly the ones who should be apologizing. We extended an olive branch as a way of saying, let's all get on the same page. Let's see what we can do to make things better. But it is incumbent, in my opinion, on her and Harry to apologize to us, to the British royal family, to Great Britain. And there is no grace.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's
But of course, you know they're not going to apologise, Sam, because over the weekend, Prince Harry gave an interview, very ironically, by the way, to one of his BFFs in the British press that he claims is out to destroy him and that he despises so much. But anyway, he gave an interview all the same to the British press and demanded an apology from the royal family and from Charles and William. King Charles is apparently considering some sort of reconciliation meeting before the coronation because he doesn't want it to be ruined. What's your advice to Charles and William? Would you recommend that they apologise, or do you think that comes with significant risks?
I think that comes with a great deal of risk. I'm not going to candy coat this. When you're dealing with people who, number one, have said they won't stop and who seem to want control and who have leaked security details about sensitive issues, who have created national and international security threats with their loose lips and their recklessness, in my opinion. I think the burden is on them to look at themselves and to apologize. But for King Charles to apologize, I think is acquiescing to, some false suggestion that he should, when all of the egregious actions, all of the injury has been directed at the royal family. And in my personal opinion, and I think the opinion of many mental health professionals, when you apologize to sociopaths and narcissists, and the world have been suggesting that there is a problem with narcissism there, you find yourself beating a dead horse. You find yourself opening the door for more abuse. You cannot be apathetic and enable that sort of manipulation and control. It would be absolutely dangerous, in my opinion, to do so. They need to grow up, in my opinion. They need to be accountable, and they need to be humble enough to apologize. That is what diplomats and humanitarians do, especially when they...
Well, they claim they're all about compassion, don't they? They claim they're all about compassion. They've shown no compassion. And I'm interested to know what you made of Harry's book, Sam, because there was no compassion shown. There's actually lots of misogynistic statements made throughout the book. I read some of them out earlier. And also, he didn't seem to show any compassion to the Markle family. Yet again, you were dismissed.
You know what? That's like water seeks its own level. It's water under the bridge. And coming from someone who would treat Her Majesty the Queen when she was, in failing health, and Prince Philip and the entire British royal family with such disregard, I wouldn't expect it direct, any sympathy or compassion towards our family. I think he is lacking in empathy, remorse, and shame. I think he's so underdeveloped and introspective that he really needs to get counseling, in my opinion, because I think he is stuck at an adolescent stage of resentment over a whole host of issues. And I think that's his blockade. I don't think he can think like an adult because I don't think emotionally he is one. So it's par for the course, I think, for him to behave as he is, bitterly and spewing delusion everywhere. And it seems to be an intention getting ployed, but it's so injurious. When you've got the Taliban pissed off at you and you're creating an Iranian international crisis, and they're using statements that he made about the Taliban as a justification for executing someone, we have a much bigger problem than just juvenile delinquency and being at a fixated stage of development. We've got someone who now is a loose cannon on the world stage, in my opinion. I think King Charles should, take that very seriously. Really.
Well, he should, and I think the titles should be stripped. I don't think they should be invited to the coronation, because I think what he's now done is really undermined Britain, really, not to mention the way that he's treated his own family, and it is the opposite of compassion that I think he's shown in this book. What did you make of this threat that they might have another book coming out and that your sister might be writing her own autobiography? And Samantha, I wonder how worried you are about that, because obviously you and your father and your brother and your family are likely to be focused on much more in Meghan's book than you were in Harry's.
No, I think it is established, from Megyn Kelly to world-noted psychiatrists, there's a clear disconnect from reality. There's a clear problem with the truth. She's been noted as being a compulsive liar. So I don't really think anything she says has any credibility. And again, I don't think it's just Harry. I think both of them should seek counseling. I think that...
I mean, it's so ironic, isn't it, Sam, that here you are, you're in the States, you're a free speech champion, you're very anti-woke, and your sister is all for cancel culture. How do you think you ended up on such different political paths?
I don't really think they're for cancel culture. I don't think that they are that woke. I don't think that they represent what they posit themselves as representing. For example, they take it upon themselves to have free speech, as we see, my God, spewing in every book, every interview. So
but if you attack them, you're cancelled. No, very good point. Samantha Markle, so great to speak to you. Your first interview, of course, since the publication of Spare. That is Sam Markle, the free speech champion and the sister of the Duchess of Sussex. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union jackass. Dawn Neeson, who do you want to nominate for today's greatest Briton?
My greatest Briton is Labour MP Rosie Duffield, who was heckled by male MPs and even more disgracefully some other women in Parliament for simply standing up for women's rights.
Yeah, that was an absolutely disgraceful moment in the House of Commons. Adam Brooks, your nominee.
I'm going to surprise a few people because I'm not his biggest fan, but it's Rishi Sunak for blocking the gender reform bill of Nicola Sturgeon. And I feel common sense is finally prevailing. And hopefully he'll use a bit more common sense going forward and start cutting taxes.
Ashley James, your nominee.
Well, I know I'm not going to win this, Dan, but I wanted to show support for the public sector workers and the unions in their fight to help people get a fair and decent wage, which will obviously also protect our education and healthcare system so it can be fit for purpose. OK, well, I'm actually going to go with Rosie Duffield as the greatest Briton because I think she is one of the bravest MPs and her treatment in the House was completely despicable yesterday. Dawn Neeson, your union jackass nominee, please.
I'm going to go for the Metropolitan Police, not individual coppers. There's some really, really good coppers out there. I want to state that, right? The Metropolitan Police over missing vile rapist David Carrick at least 9 times and now investigating 1,600 other cases of potential other David Carricks within the force, some of whom are still working.
Yeah, really terrible situation. Adam Brooks, your nominee?
My union jackass is Keir Starmer for attending Davos and mixing it with the elites, corporations and big business. He's definitely not a man of the people.
He's at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, isn't he? He's flowing out there today. And Ashley James, your union jackass nominee.
Mine is the MP Simon Clarke, who said nurses forced to use food banks should just budget better. I think it's so patronising to working class people. Yeah, just another example of the Tories being completely out of touch with regular working people.
OK, well, speaking of politicians being completely out of touch with regular working people, my winner is Keir Starmer, who claims to be a man of the people, but has flown to be at the World Economic Forum in Davos. I mean, look, there's loads of reasons why you shouldn't sign up to the World Economic Forum, but even if it's just the optics. I think we know this is a Prime Minister who's going to be following in the footsteps, or a potential future Prime Minister who's going to be following in the footsteps of Tony Blair, and I think that's a really terrifying thing. But thank you so much for my superstar panel tonight, Dawn Neeson, Adam Brooks and Ashley James. Thank you for your company tonight. I've had a great one, actually. But don't worry, we're going to do it all again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Next up, though, it's Headliners with their irreverent take on tomorrow's newspapers. Good night.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.